The Targaryens sat on the Iron Throne for 283 years. All this time there was a house in Westeros that ruled its city long before the first dragon ever laid eyes on the shores of this continent, and continued to rule it long after the last Targaryen lost the throne, House Hightower. And here is what is truly strange about this story. In all their monstrously long life, this lineage never once seriously reached for the crown of the Seven Kingdoms. Not a single rebellion for the throne, not a single claimant of their own, not a single attempt to don the crown, despite the fact that they are older than almost everyone, as rich as the Lannisters, and craftier than most of those you could name off the top of your head.
So here is the main question, the one worth staying until the end for. How did a house that barely played the Game of Thrones manage to outlive everyone who actually did?
We know the Hightowers from a narrow sliver of their history. From the House of the Dragon series, where Otto Hightower holds the position of Hand for decades, and his daughter Alicent becomes queen and mother to the king. From Game of Thrones, where Samwell Tarly sails to Old Town to train as a maester and sees only the fire of the lighthouse above the fog. From the White Cloak of Sir Gerald Hightower, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, who died at the Tower of Joy guarding a secret that changed the entire saga. These are tiny fragments. Behind them lies a history thousands of years long, and hidden within it is a pattern that explains everything this house has done and everything it hasn't.
Let's start with the essence, because without it, nothing else will make sense. Every great house has a trait that dictates its decisions across all generations. For the Starks, it is duty, which is always more precious than survival. For the Lannisters, it is legacy, for which one might burn anything. For the Greyjoys, it is freedom, which always turns into self-destruction. For the Hightowers, it is influence over power. They realized one thing very early on that other houses hadn't figured out in 8,000 years. If you own the place without which someone else's power cannot function, you don't need to be the power yourself.
Look at their sigil. A white stone tower with a fire at the top, on a smoky grey field. Not a predator, not a weapon, not a crown. All the great houses chose a beast or a force for their sigil. The Stark direwolf warns, the Lannister lion threatens, the Targaryen three-headed dragon promises destruction. The Hightowers chose a building, and a strictly utilitarian infrastructural building at that, useful to outsiders. The lighthouse doesn't exist to frighten anyone. It exists so that foreign ships can reach where they need to go.
Now, the motto, "We light the way." Listen to how unlike everything else in Westeros that is. Hear me roar, winter is coming, fire and blood, unbowed, unbent, unbroken. Every house screams its strength to the world, and only the Hightowers define themselves through service. We light the way. It sounds like modesty, almost like self-deprecation, but think for a second about what that means in practice. Whoever holds the lighthouse decides which ship enters the harbor and which one will wander in the fog of the whispering sound all night and shatter against the rocks. This isn't modesty. It is the quietest form of control one could possibly imagine.
And their castle is exactly the same. The Hightower stands on Battle Isle at the mouth of the Honey Wine, right in the center of Old Town. It is the tallest man-made structure in Westeros, taller than the wall, which stretches for 700 feet. The shadow of the tower cuts through the city like a sword, and for centuries the people of Old Town have told the time of day by that shadow. In other words, the life of the second largest city in the Seven Kingdoms is literally marked by the shadow of House Hightower. No one ever gave such an order. The tower simply stands, and the people beneath it live by its shadow.
And here is what all this leads to. Throughout their history, the Hightowers have built 3 levers, each more powerful than an army. the citadel, where maesters are forged and then sent to every castle in Westeros, and without whom no lord knows how to heal, calculate, or send a letter. The Starry Sept, where for thousands of years before the conquest, the High Septon sat, that is, spiritual authority over the entire continent, and the port of Old Town, through which the money, goods, and ships of the entire South flowed. Knowledge, faith, and trade, three things without which no crown can hold. And all three sit at the Hightowers' home, on their land, with their money.
This is what this house is made of. Not swords, but institutions. And now, let's look at how this trait manifested over the millennia, because the pattern you are about to see explains both their incredible longevity and the one single generation that broke this pattern and paid a terrible price.
Let's start with where they even came from. And here is the first oddity, which should have alerted the reader back in the book appendices. Most great houses have a founder, a legend of how it all began. Len the Clever tricked his way into Casterly Rock. Brandon the Builder raised Winterfell and the Wall. Garth Greenhand grew the Reach. The Hightowers have no such legend. When they first appear in the oldest records, they are already kings, already sitting in Old Town, already ruling.
Furthermore, no one really knows who they are by blood. Most scholars consider them descendants of the first men. But Maester Yandel in The World of Ice and Fire suggests something quite different, that the Hightowers descend from mariners and traders who settled at the mouth of the Whispering Sound before the first men. That is, from people who came to Westeros before those we are accustomed to calling the first. If Yandel is right, then the Hightowers aren't even truly Westerosi. They are older than the very concept of Westeros, and they didn't live in a castle they built themselves. They settled in someone else's fortress. On Battle Isle stands an ancient square fortification of black stone, a labyrinth of grim halls, cellars, and passages. And this fortress was there before them. Who built it? No one knows. We will return to this stone toward the end because the most interesting thing in the entire history of the house is hidden there. But for now, remember a simple thing. The lineage of House Hightower begins with someone moving into a foreign structure of unknown origin and becoming a king within it.
Первую башню, которую они построили сами, была деревянной и возвышалась над крепостью примерно на 50 футов. Простой маяк для торговых судов, потому что туман в реке Шепота толстый, а гавань богата. Потом была вторая деревянная башня, повыше, потом третья, потом четвертая. И только легендарный король Утор из Хайтауэра оплатил постройку пятой, целиком из камня, которая возвышалась над гаванью на 200 футов. Проект, согласно легенде, спроектировал Брэндон-строитель сам или его сын. Отметим логику этого дома даже в мифе. Они не позвали строителя, чтобы построить крепость или стену. Они позвали лучшего строителя эпохи, чтобы сделать им большую лампу.
It was during the time of Uthor's sons that an event occurred, whose consequences Westeros is still dealing with today. King Uthor had two sons. The eldest, Urrigon, inherited the crown. The younger, Prince Perimor, nicknamed the Twisted, spent almost his entire life bedridden. He couldn't fight, couldn't rule, couldn't even walk properly. And he occupied himself with the only thing he had left, gathering people around him who knew something. Teachers, healers, septons, singers, alchemists, sorcerers. He loved listening to scholars argue among themselves. When Paramore died, his brother Jurgen gave this motley crew a piece of land on the banks of the Honeywine so they could settle and continue their arguments. Thus, the citadel was born.
Think about it, the greatest repository of knowledge in the known world, an order that supplies maesters to every castle from Dorne to the Wall, began as a hobby of a sick boy from House Hightower and a gift from his brother. This was not conquest or calculation, it was a byproduct of compassion, and it proved more powerful than any army Westeros ever assembled.
Then begins their golden age, and it looks nothing like the golden ages of other houses. For the Lannisters, the golden age is Tywin, who burned Castamere. For the Targaryens, it is the conquest. For the Hightowers, the golden age is trade. Lord Jeremy Hightower developed merchantry and doubled House's wealth. His son, Lord Jason, added another 100 feet to the tower. Lord Dorian, for the sake of trade stability, set aside his own wife and married an Andal princess, which by the standards of a proud ancient lineage is actually a humiliation. But money is more important than pride. Each generation added to the fortune, and not one added to the territory.
Jeremy Hightower is credited with a phrase that explains the entire house better than any analysis. The meaning is roughly this: Highgarden covers our back, so we are free to look outward, to the sea and the lands beyond it. There is your entire strategy in one sentence. Let someone else hold the border, fight the Dornish, and deal with rebellious bannermen. We will pay for that, while we look to the sea. No other great house in Westeros ever thought to admit out loud that having someone else's army in their service is more profitable than their own glory.
And here it is time to speak of the first crack, because it appeared exactly at the moment of their highest ascent. Old Town was a tempting prize. It was stormed and looted more than once, by the Ironborn, by the Dornish, and by the armies of the Gardeners, the kings of the Reach. Gyle Swan Gardener looted the city, but could never take the tower itself. And at some point, the Hightowers made a choice that defined their entire future. They didn't fight Highgarden to the bitter end. King Clymont, nicknamed the Sea Lion, the very one who broke the Ironborn invasion, married the daughter of Garland to Gardener, and Garland, for the sake of this, set aside his own wives and took Clymont's daughter as his wife.
Old Town entered the Kingdom of the Reach not through conquest, but through a marriage contract. Stop for a second and appreciate what happened. A house that had been royal for thousands of years voluntarily ceased to be royal. Lymond went to sleep as the king of the Hightower and woke up as the first lord of Old Town. He traded the crown for security and the right not to fight. For the Starks or the Greyjoys, this would have been the end of the world and eternal shame. For the Hightowers, it was a deal, and a profitable one at that. A crown is the duty to defend borders. A lord's title is the opportunity to count money while someone else defends the borders.
This is what they were at their peak. Wealthier than almost everyone, older than almost everyone, and yet they voluntarily stepped into secondary roles. And that is precisely why everything that follows becomes truly interesting. Because over the next millennia, the Hightowers would have to survive the coming of the Andals, a change of religion, dragonfire, and a mad king who would personally want their blood. And every time, they would wriggle out of it the same way.
The first serious test came from the east and was called the Coming of the Andals. People with iron weapons, 7-pointed stars carved into their chests, and a new religion that did not tolerate the old gods poured across the narrow sea. The kingdoms of the first men fell one after another. The Vale was conquered entirely. House Arryn literally grew on the bones of the former kings. The Riverlands drowned in blood.
The north survived only because it stood far away and was cold.
But the Hightowers and the Gardeners did what almost no one else did. They did not fight the Andals. They negotiated with them and formed an alliance. As a result, the Reach kept its rulers, its lands, and its wealth, and the Andals got what they came for without decades of slaughter. Pay attention to this pattern because it will repeat many more times. When a force that cannot be stopped bangs on the door, the Hightowers do not lock it, they open it and offer to invest in a common cause.
But the true genius was not in the alliance. It was in what happened next. The Hightowers did not just adopt the new religion, they sheltered it. Lord Daemon, nicknamed the Pious, became one of the first great lords of Westeros to adopt the Faith of the Seven. His son, Lord Tristan, was raised by Septons and built the Starry Sept, and Tristan's son, Lord Barris, gifted the High Septon his first crystal crown. In other words, the very symbol of supreme spiritual authority in Westeros came out of the Hightowers' pocket.
Now, put it all together. The Starry Sept became the seat of the High Septon thousands of years before the conquest. This means that the head of the entire continent's religion lived for millennia in the Hightowers city, on Hightower land, under the shadow of their tower. No king could be crowned, marry, or declare war without the blessing of a man who ate breakfast 2 steps from their doorstep. No army could enter Old Town without wondering what the faith would say about it. The Hightowers achieved a state where religion itself became their wall.
И заметьте, что нет ни одного столько насильственного шага здесь. Они не заваливали никого, не свергали никого, ничего не брали ни у кого. Они просто были достаточно щедры и достаточно дальновидны в нужный момент. Каждое поколение вкладывало в институцию, которая в то время еще не была всесильной. Молодая религия, странная компания скрипахинов на реке, купцы с Востока. С веками эти инвестиции превратились в силу, которую нельзя было осадить или взять мечом.
И тогда небо Вестероса наполнились драконами, и именно этот момент должен был положить конец их прекрасной стратегии. Эйгон Таргариен высадился в устье Черноводной. Его сестры сожгли Харренхалл вместе с Харреном Блэком и всем его родом. На поле пагубном сгорело 4000 человек, а с ними король Мэрн IX Гарднер, правитель Простора, и все его наследники. Род Гарднер, который правил Простором со времен Гарта Зеленорука, пресек свое существование в один день.
Lord Manfred Hightower did not go to the field of fire. Formally, he was obligated to. The Gardeners were his liege lords, he was their bannerman, and the summons was lawful. Instead, he stayed home and waited. And in the Starry Sept, at that time, the High Septon locked himself away and prayed for 7 days without food or water so that the Seven would give him an answer. After 7 days, he emerged and announced, the faith would not oppose Aegon because otherwise Old Town would burn along with the Starry Sept.
Let's be honest and call things by their names. The High Septon in this story did Manfred a huge favor, and that favor came exactly on time. The Hightowers received an impeccable religious justification for not fulfilling their duty to their liege. Not cowardice, not treason, but the will of the gods. And when Aegon flew to Old Town on Balerion, Manfred opened the gates. The city was not burnt. Moreover, the High Septon anointed Aegon and recognized the right of House Targaryen to rule all 7 kingdoms.
Now assess the result of that one night. The Gardeners are dead, every last one of them. Highgarden was given to the Tyrells, who until then were merely stewards. The Kingdom of the Reach no longer exists.
but the Hightowers kept their city, wealth, titles, fleet, and the citadel, and on top of that, they gained a new liege who yesterday was handing towels to the gardeners. Moreover, the very dating system of Westeros, all those years after the conquest, begins with a coronation that took place in their city, in their sept. A house that did not participate in the war ended up at the point from which the world begins to count time.
It is worth catching your breath here and noting one detail that is easy to miss. Manfred offered Aegon his youngest daughter as a wife. Aegon refused, so as not to offend his own sisters, but the fact itself is telling. Not even a day had passed since the opening of the gates, and the High Powers were already trying to weave their blood into the new dynasty, not by the sword, not by claim, but through the marriage bed. Remember this attempt. 100 years later, they will succeed, and the consequences will be monstrous.
Третья поворотная точка пришла быстро, и он почти стоил дому всего. Верховный Септон, который был дядей девушки по имени Сирис Хайтауэр, предложил ее в жены принцу Мейгару Таргериону, вместо того брака внутри семьи, на который настаивала королевская семья. Мейгар взял ее в жены. Сирис так и не родила детей. Через 14 лет Мейгар взял вторую жену, объявив первую бесплодной, и именно тогда Хайтауры оказались в самом опасном положении за всю свою историю. Их дочь была публично унижена мужчиной, который вскоре станет самым жестоким кинь-в-сено в Вестеросе и будет летать на Балерионе.
Lord Manfred objected to the second marriage. Then the nightmare began. Maegor swore against the faith. The warriors' sons. Dragonfire over the septs. And in the 43rd year after the conquest, the High Septon died under circumstances that no one could ever explain. The death was so timely for Maegor that suspicions flew in all directions. And among the suspects, Lady Patrice Hightower, the unmarried aunt of the then Lord, is named. There was never an official charge, but immediately after this death, Old Town opened to Maegor, and Morgan Hightower turned out to be the only warrior's son whom the king pardoned.
Put the picture together. The High Septon, an ally and relative of the house, gets in the king's way. The High Septon dies. The city immediately surrenders to the king without a fight. A relative of the house who is in the rebellious order is the only one to receive a pardon. Maybe it's a chain of coincidences. Or maybe House Hightower, once again, just happened to be on the winning side exactly a second before it became clear who had won. Westeros is full of houses that guess the winner. The Hightowers are the only ones who guessed every time.
And the final touch to this era which shows the limit of their flexibility. Maegor sent an order to Old Town, behead Princess Rhaella, a child, given to the Scepters for fostering, as punishment for her mother's escape. Lord Hightower refused. He didn't just refuse, he threw the messenger into the dungeon and announced his support for Prince Jaehaerys. This is the only moment where the calculating house goes against the king directly, and it happens when Maegor was already losing everything. Even their principles kick in at the mathematically correct second.
We have analyzed how this house spends centuries bypassing every catastrophe without ever seriously compromising itself. But all of this worked only as long as the Hightowers remained behind the throne. And then a generation was born that decided that standing behind the throne was no longer necessary. And that is when what almost destroyed them entirely began.
Otto Hightower was not the Lord of Old Town. That is the first thing one needs to understand about the story everyone watches in House of the Dragon. Otto was the younger brother of the Lord, meaning a man without an inheritance, without a castle, and without a future in his home city. The only path upward for such a man lay through the capital, and Otto walks that path to the end. He served as Hand of the King under Jaehaerys I, then under Viserys I, then under Aegon II. 3 kings. No other hand in the history of Westeros has endured such a thing. Then something happened that the Hightowers had not allowed themselves for millennia. When Queen Aemma Arryn died, Otto's daughter Alicent married King Viserys and bore him 3 sons and a daughter. And at that moment, the entire centuries-old strategy of the house turned 180 degrees. The Hightowers were no longer the ones lighting the way for kings. They became royal blood. Alicent's eldest son, Aegon, was a Targaryen by his father and a Hightower by his mother. For the first time in history, the house had a chance to put one of their own on the Iron Throne.
Here the book and the series diverge most noticeably, and it is worth saying so directly. In Fire and Blood, Alicent's story is presented through contradictory sources, and she herself appears from the very beginning as a confident court figure, an adult woman who knows exactly what she is striving for. The series rewrote this in a different direction. There, Alicent is Rhaenyra's childhood friend, a girl whom her father uses as a tool, and her feud with Rhaenyra grows out of personal pain, not cold calculation. The famous scene with the dying Viserys' last words, which Alicent misunderstood, is entirely invented by the showrunners. In the book, there is no such misunderstanding.
The difference is fundamental. The book version makes the Hightowers predators who consciously went for the crown. The series version makes them a family dragged into the crown by one ambitious man, while everyone else paid the price. Which is more interesting from a dramatic standpoint, decide for yourselves. But notice that in both versions, the outcome is the same, and it is catastrophic.
Because next was the Dance of the Dragons. And here, the house that had not fought for thousands of years found itself in the very center of the war. Otto crowned his grandson. Alicent became the Dowager Queen under her king's son. Her brother, Gwaine, commanded the city watch of King's Landing. Lord Ormond Hightower, Otto's nephew, led the Green Army from the Reach and, along the way, knighted Prince Daeron. For the first time in millennia, all the house's resources were thrown into a single military campaign.
And look at how it ended for each of them. Otto and Gwaine perished during the fall of King's Landing. Alicent was taken prisoner by Rhaenyra and spent the rest of her life effectively imprisoned, outliving all of her children. Ormond and his cousin Brynden, the finest knight in Old Town, died at the First Battle of Tumbleton at the hands of Roderick Dustin. Sir Hober Hightower, who took command after them, proved to be a wretched commander. He poisoned the turncoat off the White and perished in the process himself.
But the most devastating consequence usually escapes the viewers. 3 of the Hightowers' own bannermen, houses Costane, Mullendore, and Bisbury, fought for the Blacks, against their own liege lord. In thousands of years of cautious policy, the Hightowers had never lost a single vessel. Yet the moment they involved themselves in a dynastic war, their own banner fractured. That is the price of abandoning one's strategy. The house that knew how to be useful to everyone became a party to a conflict for the first time, and instantly discovered that parties have enemies.
And for what? Aegon II held the throne for less than 3 years and died of poison. All of Alicent's children died. The throne went to Aegon III, Rhaenyra's son, that is, the opposing side. Dragons were practically extinct after this war. The only generation of Hightowers that reached for power lost more men in a few years than the entire lineage had lost in the previous few millennia, and they gained nothing.
Although no, they did gain something, and this detail is beautiful in its cynicism. Sir Talon Lannister, Master of Coin under Aegon II, sent a quarter of the royal treasury to be kept in the High Tower. While the Hightowers were losing sons on the battlefield, a quarter of the Seven Kingdoms' money quietly moved in their cellars. Even in a moment of total strategic failure, this house managed to remain a place where people deposit valuables. The instinct worked even where reason failed.
The third season of The House of the Dragon, which was released in the summer of 2026, brought Ormond Hightower's arc to the forefront and turned him into a distinct political figure rather than just a name from the Chronicles. Showing the War of the Greens without Oldtown was impossible, and the series finally began to treat the house as an independent force with its own motivation, not reducible to a love for Aegon. How far this will deviate from Fire and Blood, the finale will show. But the very fact is telling. Even the writers eventually concluded that behind the Greens stands not just a dynasty, but a specific southern house with its own scores to settle.
We have analyzed the only instance where the Hightowers played the Game of Thrones by the general rules, and we saw how it ended. But the question for which everything was started remains. The house did survive after all. Moreover, by the events we know from the books and the series, it is rich again, strong again, and standing on the sidelines again. This means the lesson was learned. The question is, which one?
The lesson turned out to be simple, and the first to learn it was Lionel Hightower, the son of the fallen Ormond. He didn't go to any capital. He stayed home and occupied himself with what the house does best, money and connections. And here is where one of the most underrated details in the entire saga appears. When the Rosary Bank collapsed, dragging half of King's Landing's finances down with it, Lady Samantha Tarly, Lionel's stepmother and later his lover, founded her own bank in Oldtown, the Bank of Oldtown.
Реализуйте, что это значит. К 3 ливерам, которые дом собирал тысячелетия, знание, вера и торговля, добавился 4 – кредит. Место, где хранятся деньги и где оно выдается. Это было после танца. Именно после того, как война свела на нет династические авантюры, Хайтауры вернулись к своей истинной стратегии и укрепили ее. Не корона, а инфраструктура. Не власть, а то, без чего власть не работает. Красная нить дома вновь заново затянулась после единственного разрыва.
From there, this logic works automatically, generation after generation. When the first Blackfire Rebellion split Westeros, the Hightowers didn't seriously support either side. They kept a foot in the Targaryen camp and the Blackfire camp simultaneously. For any other house, this would be a mark of shame for centuries. For the Hightowers, it is standard risk accounting. It doesn't matter who wins. It matters that the winner owes us.
But there was something else in their history, and it is worth mentioning because caution sometimes kills, too. During the Great Spring Sickness, Lord Quentyn Hightower ordered Oldtown to be locked tight, and for anyone attempting to leave, to be killed. The logic was ironclad. Stop the contagion at any cost. The sickness took half the city anyway. And on the very day Quentyn finally rescinded the order, the surviving townspeople found him in the street with his young son and killed them both. The house that had managed people for thousands of years through convenience and utility behaved toward them as expendable material for the only time. And the people immediately presented the bill.
A quiet pause, because we're entering familiar territory. Imagine Oldtown on a typical morning. The fog from the whispering sound is so thick that the city is invisible, and over this milk hangs only one thing, the orange glow of the lighthouse, looking like a murky moon. Ships head toward it, just as they have for thousands of years. Below the port roars, the bells of the Starry Sept ring, and gray robes shuffle through the courtyards of the citadel. Everything is the same as it was under Uthor, under Lymond, under Manfred. The world around them has burned dozens of times, but this routine has never changed.
Now to the era you know, Robert's Rebellion. The Targaryens are collapsing.
The Mad King is burning people alive, and the North and the Vale are marching on the capital. What do the Hightowers do? They remain loyal to Aerys until the end. And this looks illogical only until you remember what their liege lords, the Tyrells, were doing at the time. Those same Tyrells spent the entire war standing outside Storm's End, doing nothing useful for either side. The Reach as a whole sat it out. The Hightowers sat it out with them, and when it was all over, they bent the knee to Robert and lost nothing.
But the war did take one person from this house, and he proved more important than all the others combined. Sir Gerald Hightower, nicknamed the White Bull, Lord Commander of the King's Guard, died at the Tower of Joy, defending Lyanna Stark and her child from Ned Stark and his men. A Hightower who died guarding the secret of Jon Snow's parentage, the secret around which the entire saga is built. Even in this episode, the house is true to itself. Their representative lays no claim to anything. He stands guard over someone else's secret. We light the way.
Есть еще доказательства, что стратегия работает. Лорд Лейтон Хайтауэр, известный как Старик из Староместа, уже более 10 лет не спускался со своей башни. Он управляет вторым городом королевства из облаков, буквально не касаясь земли. Однако Тайвин Ланнистер, человеку, которому никто не отказывал, предлагал Лейтону своего сына Тириона в качестве мужа для своей дочери, и ему отказали. Подумайте сами, Хайтауэр отказал Тайвину Ланнистеру и не понес никаких последствий за это. Много ли вы знаете домов, которые могли себе такое позволить?
And now the most beautiful part. Leighton's second daughter, Allery Hightower, is married to Mace Tyrell, Lord of Highgarden. Their daughter is Marjorie, the very Marjorie who successively marries Renly Baratheon, Joffrey, and Tommen. That is, the granddaughter of Leighton Hightower finds herself one step away from the status of Queen of the Seven Kingdoms 3 times, and effectively becomes it. The Hightowers didn't make claims, didn't fight for the throne, didn't put forward a pretender. They simply married their daughter to a neighbor, and then the blood of the house made its own way to King's Landing.
И обратите внимание на контраст с танцем драконов. Когда Отто и Алисент прямой наводкой пробивались дорогой к трону, дом лишился почти всех мужчин своего поколения. Когда правнучка все того же дома стала королевой через 2 поколения браков, дом Хайтауэров не потратил ни одного солдата на это. Одна и та же цель, 2 разных метода. Первый обошелся им катастрофой, второй ничего не стоил. В этом, собственно, и весь секрет долголетия этого династии, сформулированный в одном примере.
Leighton has another daughter, the eldest, and exactly enough is known about her to be unsettling. Malora Hightower, nicknamed the Mad Maid. Rumors circulate about her being a sorceress and a dark practitioner. When Euron Greyjoy captured the Shield Islands and tried to blockade the mouth of the Honeywine, Leighton sent his sons on errands. Baelor is building ships, Gunthor is fortifying the harbor, Garth is preparing men, Humphrey is sailing to Lees to hire mercenaries, and the old man himself has locked himself at the top of the tower with Malora, and if rumors are to be believed, is holding council with books of sorcery.
Linger on this image. For the first time in all the history known to us, the House of Hightower is genuinely threatened. And the head of the house responds to this not just with a fleet and money. He climbs to the very top of the tower, where the base of black stone guards who knows what, takes with him a daughter who is called a sorceress, and opens books that the Citadel, standing 2 steps away, officially considers superstition. This is either senile madness or the most disturbing scene in all of A Feast for Crows.
and here it is necessary to speak directly about the series. In Game of Thrones, there are no high towers at all. Sam arrives in Old Town, walks through the Citadel, steals books, and the question of who owns this city never arises. No Leighton, no Melora, no siege by the Ironborn, no sense that a tower hangs over Sam in which something is happening. An entire plot line simply fell out. That is precisely why most viewers know the Hightowers only as Alicent's family and are genuinely surprised to learn that it is one of the most powerful houses in Westeros.
Who do you think is more important for the future of the saga, out of Leighton's two daughters? Ellery, whose daughter was queen 3 times, or Melora, who sits with books of sorcery at the top of the tower? Write in the comments, because this is a question that is currently splitting fans in two. We have traced the path of this house from the first wooden lighthouses to Euron's siege, but behind the events and decisions lies something else, something that lies in the very foundation of their castle, literally.
Let's start with the tower itself, because it is the only castle in Westeros that is a mystery in its own right. The High Tower is the tallest man-made structure in the known world, taller than the wall, which rises 700 feet. Jon Snow, looking at the wall, thought about how the lighthouse of Old Town was taller. Casterly Rock is 3 times taller than both the wall and the High Tower. But the rock is a cliff, not a construction. People built this tower with their hands, and no one else in this world has ever built anything like it.
The fire at its peak can change color. Usually it's a steady orange light for ships, but green flames mean the calling of the banners of House Hightower. In other words, the lighthouse also serves as an alert system for the entire Reach. And here's a detail that is both funny and eerie. In House of the Dragon, the color of Alicent's faction was chosen as green precisely because the green fire of Old Town signifies the mustering of troops. The greens are not named that by accident, it is literally the tower's signal.
Говорят, что с вышин башни видно стену. Это в контексте любого мира физически невозможно, но фраза перекочевывает из книги в книгу, и Мартин специально повторяет ее устами своих героев. Образ работает. В Вестеросе есть одна точка, из которой видно все. И тот мужчина, который сидит на этой точке, не спускался уже более 10 лет. Возможно, именно поэтому он и не спускается.
And now for the foundation, the reason all of this was told. Beneath the tower, on the cliffs of Battle Isle, stands a square fortress of black stone. Unfaced, without ornamentation, a labyrinth of grim halls, cellars, and passages. And here is the main thing about it. The massive walls and intricate interior rooms are made of solid stone, without a single seam, without mortar, without chisel marks, as if they weren't built, but cast in one piece.
Майстры Посвящанин Совет уже столетиями спорят об исходе этой крепости, и на этот счет есть 4 теории. Первая и наиболее популярная – это работа валерийцев, поскольку подобный бесшовный камень встречается и на дорогах валерийцев, и в черных стенах Волантиса. Майстер Джеллико берет это за основу и предполагает, что старый город начинался как торговая база для кораблей из Валерии, Старого Гиса и Летних островов еще до прибытия первых людей в Вестерос. Если это верно, то валерийцы были на этом континенте за 1000 лет до Иегона.
The second theory belongs to Septon Barth, the smartest man of Jaehaerys' era, and it is far more unsettling. Barth claimed that the Valyrians came to Westeros because their priests prophesied that the doom of humanity would come from the lands beyond the Narrow Sea. That is to say, the Valyrians didn't build this fortress for trade, but as an outpost against what lives on this continent.
Considering that the others come from the north of this very continent, Barth's theory turns from an eccentricity into something very uncomfortable.
The third theory belongs to Archmaester Quillian, who believes the fortress was built by the Maze Makers, a mysterious people who left behind stone labyrinths on the islands of the Stepstones. And the fourth, the most chilling, Maester Theron suggested that the black stone was laid by the Deep Ones, creatures from the sea, and pointed to its resemblance to the sea stone chair of the Iron Islands, the very one the Greyjoys sit upon. And the small folk of Old Town don't bother with theories at all, saying the tower simply appeared.
Now add to this the name of the island, Battle Isle. It is called that in the oldest records that exist, and not a single chronicle, not a single song remembers what battle gave it its name. The singers of Westeros remember everything. They remember the long night. They remember the war between the first men and the children of the forest. They remember things from 8,000 years ago. But no one remembers the battle that gave the island in the center of the South's largest port its name. This is not forgetfulness. This is a hole that Martin dug consciously.
И здесь появляется деталь, которая до сих пор вызывает у меня мурашки по коже. Есть легенда, что драконы когда-то гнездились на Battle Isle, и что первый Хайтауэр положил этому конец. Обратите внимание на формулировку. Не приручил драконов, не подружился с ними, не бежал от них, положил этому конец. Первое зафиксированное деяние этого дома еще до всех королей и всех маяков – это то, что они убрали драконов с той земли, на которой захотели жить.
Это теория, а не канон, и надо подавать ее именно так. Но вот и факт, который прекрасно вписывается в эту теорию. Мервин Мак, архимейстер Цитадели и единственный мужчина в Ордене с валерийским звеном цепи за изучение магии, говорит Самуэлу Тарли в пире в Тервятник одну вещь, которая переворачивает всю сагу. Он спрашивает у Сэмуэла, кто он думает убил всех драконов в прошлый раз. И тут же сам отвечает себе: миру, который строит цитадель, не нужна магия, пророчество или стеклянные свечи. И еще меньше ему нужны драконы.
Let's examine this theory fairly, from both sides. The arguments for it are serious. Marwyn is not some madman off the street. He is an archmaester and a specialist in magic, meaning he is a man who knows from the inside what the Order is doing. In the dungeons of the Citadel, it is rumored, the only surviving copy of an anonymous book is locked away, referred to as either Blood and Fire or The Death of Dragons. After the dance, the dragons grew stunted and died out within a single generation, despite the fact that maesters were constantly around them, and the last dragons were kept in the dragon pit under the supervision of learned men.
And finally, magic across the world fades precisely in the centuries when the Citadel gains power and returns exactly when 3 eggs hatch in Essos. The arguments against are no less serious, and it would be fair to name them. Marwyn is the only one who claims this, and he is an outcast in the Citadel whom his colleagues consider a crank. The extinction of dragons has a boring explanation. They were locked in the dragon pit, they grew stunted in captivity, and it became increasingly difficult for them to breed. And most importantly, the Citadel is not the Hightowers. Maesters take vows, renounce their families and names, and are formally loyal to the Order, not to the Lord outside their window. The Hightowers hold the title of Defenders of the Citadel, but a defender is not an owner.
And here appears the bridge that makes the whole structure much more unpleasant. In A Dance with Dragons, Lady Barbary Dustin tells Theon about Maester Wallace Flowers, who served at Winterfell for Lord Rickard Stark. Wallace was a bastard, and his mother was a girl from House Hightower. And his father, it is rumored, was an archmaester of the Citadel. Barbary is certain that it was this maester who put southern ambitions into Rickard's head, the betrothal of Brandon to Catelyn Tully, the marriage of Lyanna to Robert Baratheon, all the politics that eventually led to the rebellion and the fall of the Targaryens.
Connect the dots.
A Hightower half-breed, raised by the citadel, ends up at the ear of a northern lord and gently turns the most ancient house of the north toward alliances that end in the destruction of the Dragon dynasty. This is one specific figure, one whisper by the fireplace, no weapons. If even a portion of the maesters work this way, then the citadel is not an order of scribes, but the most effective intelligence network in the history of the world, and it stands on land gifted by the Hightowers.
How plausible is this? In my view, a fair assessment sounds like this. That the Maesters had a hand in the death of the dragons is more likely than not. It is stated too directly through the mouth of a specialist. But the direct participation of House Hightower in this conspiracy remains a beautiful but unproven conjecture. Martin hasn't given us a single scene where a Hightower gives an order to a Maester, but he has given us a huge number of coincidences, and his coincidences are rarely accidental.
There is a second theory that I find even more interesting. It states that the Hightowers have been guarding what lies at the foundation of their tower for thousands of years. Arguments for: they settled in the Black Fortress before they built anything of their own, and lived inside it for centuries. In the appendix to A Feast for Crows, it is explicitly stated that some Hightowers dabbled in alchemy and necromancy. Leighton hasn't come down in 10 years, and his daughter is called a sorceress. Against: every ancient house has rumors of witchcraft, and deep cellars exist under every castle in Westeros. For now, this is just a sum of hints.
It's time to draw a line. Here is my position, and I will not back down from it. The Hightowers didn't lose the Game of Thrones. They simply didn't play it. And that is precisely why they outlived all the participants. While the Targaryens were burning the continent, and the Lannisters were buying it out, the Hightowers were doing something that didn't occur to anyone else. They were becoming not a player, but the board without which the game cannot begin. Knowledge, faith, trade, money. 4 pillars, none of which can be taken by the sword, because you can take a castle with a sword, but you cannot take what everyone is used to getting from you.
And here it becomes clear why there is no beast on their sigil. A predator on a sigil means the house sees the world as a hunt. A tower with a fire means something completely different. We are not participating in your hunt, we are the place you will sail past. For thousands of years, Westeros has changed gods, dynasties, languages, and borders. The Gardeners burnt, the Targaryens fell twice, the Lannisters were left with an empty treasury. But Old Town stands as it always has, and the tower shines as it always has.
One time, they forgot their own rule. Atto reached the position of hand, Alicent bore a king, and for one generation, the house stopped lighting the way and decided to walk it themselves. The result is known. Atto and Wayne are dead. Ormond and Brynden are dead. Hobart is dead. Alicent outlived all her children in captivity, and the house's own bannerman fought against it. No enemy in millennia has dealt the Hightowers such damage as they dealt themselves by reaching for the throne just once.
And perhaps the most beautiful thing in this whole story is this. 2 generations after the dance, without a single soldier and without a single claim, the blood of the Hightowers still ended up in the royal bed. Ellery married Mace Tyrell, and her daughter, Margaery, stood at the very foot of the throne 3 times. What Otto achieved at the cost of the death of half his house, his descendants obtained through a simple marriage contract. This is their true weapon. Patience, with a planning horizon longer than a human life.
We light the way. For thousands of years, everyone read these words as a sign of the modesty of an ancient trading house. But a lighthouse does not serve ships. A lighthouse decides which ship reaches the harbor and which one will spend the whole night searching for the shore in the fog of the Whispering Sound. The Hightowers never laid claim to the Iron Throne. They didn't need to.
The one who holds the light is not obligated to sit on the throne, because everyone who sits on it is sailing where he shines the light anyway. Write in the comments, what do you think? Are the Hightowers the wisest house in Westeros or the most calculating? And is there even a difference between the two? I'm curious to see which side the majority will take. And subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown.